topic is strategies for sharing your conscious company story, the kind of marketing and branding arena. And we've assembled a esteemed panel.
And me.
And Greg down at the end. And really, we want to keep this interactive, but we're going to have a few questions to guide the conversation. But then please ask questions as we go. If we want to get on to the next topic, I'll try to keep things, focused so we can get through some key areas that might be relevant to you. Okay? But to start, we thought it might be helpful for us to kind of tell our story and tell our messages, if you will, from a conscious perspective. 1 or 2 minutes, and so you get to know who we are. I know you read our bios. We're not going to go through bios. But we want to tell a little bit about our story, if you will, which, again, may help you think about how you might tell your story going forward. So I'll start with Greg.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, guys. So if you read my LinkedIn profile, it says digital marketer and dad. And that's kind of where, I don't know if that's quite the priority setting, more of a dad than a digital marketer. But I've been working in the space for about 25 years. Spent a few years in the late 90s building websites, thinking that this thing really might take off, the World Wide Web. We actually did the first website for the Gas Lamp Quarter Association, and I see it's got a purple background and square buttons. Pretty awesome back then. So, around 2001, I met a friend. Things were starting to get a little slow. Who worked for the American Red Cross. So I took a job over there, and I spent the next 15 years at the Red Cross. And my last 2 jobs, I was the first national manager for digital marketing for biomed services, and then I actually was privileged enough to serve as a director of redcross.org, where I led a redesign of redcross.org, and we consolidated all the chapter websites. So I did that for a long time. It's actually tough to leave. We were going through a lot of transition, so I started looking around. They offered a little package for people who were flying across country a lot and wanted to get out. So I went to work for a company called Watkins, which is a subsidiary of Masco, Fortune 500 company. They're the world's largest manufacturer of hot tubs. So I have to call my dad and say, yeah, Dad, I'm going from saving lives to selling hot tubs, right? Which is an interesting thing. But of course, and I think one of the themes, and I won't go too over time here today, but it was an interesting sort of we were talking earlier about grabbing the money a little bit and looking at that side. So I went up there for about 3 years, and I was the senior manager for marketing up there for digital. And then I had a friend call about 3 years ago, because I really wasn't very happy out there. And don't tell my Watkins Masco clients this, but it was less than exciting. And he offered me a better title and less money. So I said, that sounds fantastic. I'll come down there and be a partner at a digital marketing company called Design Studio, San Diego. So we're a full-service digital marketing company. And I think one of the things that sets us apart, because that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is that our largest clients are typically nonprofits, and we also do a lot of nonprofit work. So our clients are in a shocking development. The American Red Cross is our largest client. We also work with Feed the Children out of Oklahoma. We do some local work with Kids Turn San Diego. We actually worked with Conscious Capitalism National Chapter, helping promote one of their events. I'm going faster, I'll hurry up here. And we actually just redid the Chamber of Purpose website. So, all right, go.
Cool. All right, great story.
Timer on the wall back there, by the way.
Oh, great, great story. So I'm Mitch Simon. My story is I was in it for the money. Can't lie. I went to UCLA. I got a JD MBA. Graduated. Went into Hollywood. Hated it. Came back to San Diego because this is where I went undergrad, and I got a job in high tech. Hated it. No leadership development, no caring. Pretty much, you work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, get on planes and go places. So I decided to go to Nokia. Nokia back then, when I started, was actually an incredible place to start because they were very innovative coming into San Diego, and for the first few years, they were developing the heck out of all of us new young managers and executives. So we would go and we would take all this leadership development all across the world, actually, and we get back, and it was completely different when we were actually working than the leadership development that we were taught. And I thought, okay, just going to work it, just make it happen, do everything that I learned in business school on how to be a great executive, and I built a great team. And then on February 1st, 2002, I got fired. And that was like, oh my God, like, who am I? What's going on? And I thought I did everything right. And then it was pretty much at that time that I said, okay, I'm never going to let this happen to me again. And what I'm committed to is to not let this ever happen to anybody else in my position. So pretty much the next day, I decided to go get another credential in coaching. I became an executive coach, And my focus has always been to really work with young executives and build young, incredible, we say teams that crush it on our website, teams that crush it. And so because of my history, we're focusing really now on millennials and their teams. One of our favorite teams to coach is like a $50, $75 million private company. The CEO is 30. His team is way younger. And so I really am bringing new insights and new skill sets to not just build them as leaders, but to really build them as human beings. And so that's what we do at the Simon Leadership Alliance. And I'm pleasure to be on the panel, even with you, Steve. Yes.
I know, it's tough.
And you're crushing it.
Yes.
My name's Katie Temple. I'm very happy to be here. I spent, when Conscious Capitalism first started, I was around and going to the meetings, and I don't have a good reason as to why I didn't join, but I remembered Corey, and I know that Amber and I missed each other. But anyway, so I'm glad to be back, and I love what you guys are trying to do. For 20 plus years, I've been a sportscaster, and I've traveled all over the country and internationally. Right now, I fill in a little bit on Channel 8 when they need help, but that was a terrific and fabulous and heartbreaking career. I loved every minute of it, but like most of you, I got my tail kicked in so many times and had a lot of challenges and a lot of doubt thrown at me. And what I'm doing now is I'm working with executives who want to be great on camera, whether it's to create videos, to speak in front of people, to be in front of the media, to get ready for an interview, to do an elevator pitch, whatever variations there are. And my thought was that if I could have had a little help when I was going through my career, just a little. I'm proud of what I did, but it would have just been that much better if it would have maybe gotten rid of some of the heartbreak or some of the challenges. And so what I really want to do, speaking of being conscious, is fast track my clients, take away a little bit of their pain, and help them get to where they want to go, people that want to be great communicators.
Great, thank you. And I'm Stephen Bellach. I'm a founder and co-partner with BottomLine Marketing. We're a brand strategy and marketing planning firm. So similar to Mitch in some ways, I started my career at a business school at Northwestern, in it for the money. And I went to the big consumer packaged goods companies, so I was at places like Pillsbury and Kraft and PepsiCo, and I was managing brands like Breyer's Ice Cream and Green Giant Frozen Vegetables and Tropicana Juices and Mr. and Mrs. T's and Bandicam's Frozen Fish. All good products, but are they really changing the world? And it was a great place to learn, kind of cut your teeth. But I actually always felt bad for the person on like Heinz ketchup. Like, what is Heinz ketchup versus orange juice? Much better product. But I always wanted to find a better way to kind of give back. And I actually, when I lived in Florida with Tropicana, started to work in the nonprofit world a little bit. Came out to San Diego as the head of marketing at proflowers.com when it was early stage, and then was the head of marketing at Jenny Craig. And what Jenny Craig though did for me, you think it's still a big company owned by Nestle. When we started to get testimonials back from clients whose lives we had changed, right? So I'm marketing them to get to them to join the program. But then by joining the program and losing weight and seeing how losing the weight transformed their lives, I was like, wow, this is really powerful. You can actually sell a product or service that's going to change lives as opposed to fish sticks. It's like a whole different world, right? And then I started my consulting practice with my partner. And what we've done, though, is we've kind of committed that at least a quarter of our clients are going to be in the nonprofit space. Because we, of course, want to help for-profit companies grow through messaging and planning, but the nonprofits, many don't realize they have to operate like a business. That it's not giving money to shareholders, they're reinvesting it into the organization, whatever it might be. The margins aren't as critical. They still have to operate as a business. And so we help folks in the healthcare space, in the education space, do a lot of work with community foundations. So again, we're really committed to at least a portion of our clientele in the nonprofit space as a way to give back. And we, of course, do a little bit of pro bono as we can as well. So that's kind of our world. So I thought the panel was interesting. So we have digital marketing, which is developing your story and delivering it digitally, either on a website or whatever. Mitch kind of came out of the corporate world, and one of the things about the way Mitch works is he forces people, even if they don't want to be, he forces them to be vulnerable. Because you really can't get to your story until you're willing to let your story out. And it's not comfortable sometimes, right? And Mitch is really good at making people feel uncomfortable. right?
Yeah, zip.
Right, which you may do today, be careful. And then Katie comes from a whole different world, which, in front of the camera, and recognizing there's more to that, and how do I help people who maybe aren't as comfortable telling their story and developing their story and telling it the right way and style. How do I help them in those ways? And then I come into this more traditional kind of classic marketing perspective. So hopefully interesting group here. And I know everybody here comes from very different backgrounds, and hopefully we can impart some information that will be helpful to you as you build your message around being conscious as an organization, being purpose-driven as an organization. How do you get that message out? Okay? So we have a few question areas we're going to kind of go through, and again, ask questions as we go through. If something is resonating with you, maybe you think about how do I make this more relevant to my organization, feel free to jump in. But the first question is, so we've spent a little bit of time thinking about how to develop our story and to tell our story. And wanted to kind of have the panel talk about, how do you do that? What are some approaches or strategies you might use to develop your story? Let me start with Mitch.
So what I did for you guys when I shared my story.
No preparation.
No preparation. So this also comes, so the other thing about me is I do improv. So I've been working at the National Comedy Theater for 5 years. If you're interested, Thursday night, 7:30, our team goes on. There's a tool called Story Spine, which an improviser created. You can go online, or I can give you a copy for free. It's called Story Spine, right? And so, this basically is pretty much simple. Once upon a time, I was an executive. So once upon a time, what really happened? And every day, I would go to work, I would learn, and I would be miserable every single day. But then one day, I got fired, right? And because of that, I became a coach. And because of that, I started working with teams. And because of that, I've had the impact that I have in San Diego until finally I'm here today on the panel. So one of the things that the hardest thing is what is the story spine? What is the story? What is your story? Because as I was looking on the internet, there's lots of different things with like 12 different essential parts. I like the story spine. The other way is what I found is working with my clients is it takes a little bit of coaching is the word, but just trying to have someone else dig out of you what is your story, what's essential and different about you. Most of us aren't vulnerable. Most of us don't want to be vulnerable. And what I found is whether you're trying to win business, or whether you're trying to have your team members follow you, or whether you're trying to impact your current clients through your story, it's always vulnerability that is the key to winning people over.
Absolutely.
So you may.
So I think if you look at this, Mitch put it in the context of your personal story. Each of your organizations have the same story to tell. Right? We're working, for example, right now with a new mattress product. The guy's been 30 years in the industry in Australia. His story is remarkable. And when people hear his story of how he got to building his company, why he's doing what he's doing, it's not about a mattress company, it's about him and about the story of the company. So think about your organizations, and if you could follow this kind of format for yourself, but if you're a solopreneur or it's directly related to your company, but think about your company. And I think particularly the startups now that are more purpose-driven, such rich stories that they can tell. And using this kind of format could be really powerful. Anything to add?
Do you all, does anyone have a hard time trying to figure out how to tell their story? Is it for business or just kind of for personal that you have a difficult time?
Both.
What's your business?
So I have a company called Symbio Strategies, and we've kind of been shifting our model to focus more on how do we help leaders embrace emotions in the workplace and how that is actually more powerful for them and for their people.
And how about you?
I have a tech startup, and we help people who have visible and invisible disabilities find businesses that can meet their needs so that they can get out into the community.
So if you're thinking about, maybe you're trying to tell a story about your company and you're thinking about what kind of value you want to bring your clients, right? That's the most important thing. And then you want to start with, why am I even in this? That's where you really want to start. Why am I even in this? and what happened to me to make me get involved, and why does this matter? And you want to think about the emotional part first, because we are still purchasing things by passion. People are purchasing things that they're passionate about or that connects with them emotionally. And so one of the exercises that I would go through with you is, because there are people that everybody has a story, but some people are either don't have the confidence, or no one ever told them about it, or they just haven't made time. And so there's a way that you can just ask a lot of questions. What do you like about this? When did you get started doing that? And a lot of that is from brainstorming some of the things that you like, what makes you tick, why you're in this business, why do you care about your client. There's various ways that you can go through it, but it takes a while if you're not sure that you have a story, but everybody has a story.
It's interesting. We're going to pick on you now. It's interesting that your platform, yes, is emotion, and so. But it's definitely not uncommon to actually be coaching is just a huge big heart type of work. So I'm imagine as well. It's why did you choose doing emotional leadership development than anything else?
I think it kind of took us down a path. So I really, in the workplace, we're always told to leave your personal life at home, and you have your two sides to you. But really, it doesn't matter. It always crosses over, and it always comes out in not necessarily good ways. And so, we feel if people can just truly be more of their whole self.
Right. So now you're selling. Right. Just stop. So. What I want to know is why, and you asked first, why is this so important to you?
Because I think I personally want people to feel seen and heard in the workplace.
Great. Now, I'm going to ask the question one more time, then we're going to stop. Why is it important to you? Why? What happened such that is so important to you for people to be sharing their emotions at the workplace?
I don't know if I have a good answer. I think it just has always been something that I want to give to people who I'm close to anyway. I always am kind of like the listener, the ear, the shoulder. And so for me, just having that kind of person around them is something that really matters, and changing, support them.
Great. And so as you can see, it's like question, then why that, and then finally you get close.
You're like the 6-year-old. Why?
Yeah, why? And then you're there. Boom. Great.
But so we're developing stories for ourselves and for our businesses, but we're also in those businesses to sustain and to make an income. So we need to make sure those stories are going to connect with customers, right? So what are some ways that we can ensure it connects with customers? Greg, do you want to?
Well, who here typically goes to a website before you purchase something? Right? Most people these days go something. So my lens as a digital marketer is about data, and for most of my career and what I do is trying to get people to do something, right? Whether it's hardcore just conversion marketing and optimization. So have you ever heard of something called the LFT Model? So I would look this up because the LFT Model is a really interesting tool as a framework strategy for convincing people to do something. And it was developed by a bunch of really smart people up in Seattle, and all they do is testing and optimization. So what that means is essentially multivariate, A/B. So these guys have gotten really good at it, and they developed this model. And essentially what it is at the center of it is a plane, which is your value proposition. Why you, right? And if you can lift it up with a little bit of clarity and relevance, and that relevance being, okay, well, it's got to make sense to me, and it's got to have a messaging clear, and you can reduce the anxiety and distraction, and you can fuel your plane with just a little bit of urgency, people will convert. So how does that translate on a day-to-day basis, right? I'll give you an example. Had a gentleman come into our office last week, and he sells software, right? Third-party software, pretty decent-sized company. I look at his website, and the first thing I ask is, why you? Why, if there's 10 guys who do what you do, and he's like, oh my gosh, well, he proceeded to give a very good explanation, which did not translate onto the website, which again, most people tend to look at. Another example, we work with a chain of hot tub dealers in Virginia Beach, and when we took over their marketing, their tagline was, serving Virginia Beach. I was like, this is great. Does your competition serve Virginia Beach? They're like, yeah. I'm like, these are boxes full of water eventually, right? You've got to have some competitive differentiation. So the lift model suggests, and this is where I think the purpose comes in too, right? Adding that value and being able to tell your story succinctly, shortly, in such a way, and whether your goal is just to get more leads for your business or register more people for an event that you're doing something, understanding that value proposition is core. And it's amazing how many websites I look at and people don't do that. They don't take a step back and say, here's my story, and again, in digital, it's got to be about 10 words or less, but here's why me today. So again, I would look that up and think about it if you manage a website, because as a conversion tool, whatever you're trying to do, it's a very good strategy and methodology to be able to help convince people to select you instead of the other guy.
And you also want to think about, and I know you all know this stuff intellectually, but sometimes we get so busy and we forget to take the time, but you want to think about foundationally, how do I want to make my clients feel? What pain points do I want to take away? How do I want to make them feel? Because again, we're still passion sells and we're still human beings. And what pain points do I want to take away?
And how is your story going to connect with that?
You think first about them, because you're always going to win if it's about them. Even if you're in a conversation or in a group or anything, it's always about them. And if you think about them first and then match it in an authentic way, that's the combination.
And that's where the story can make it very authentic. Because people can see through the BS really quickly. But again, if you explain to them why you got to where you were, and you got to where you are because you are in this to solve somebody's problem,
Mm-hmm.
people will connect with that if they're like, yeah, I got that problem. Right? Then they're going to reach out to you, and again, you may not be the choice, but at least you're basing your communication and your story on their needs as opposed to it's all about me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what we learn in social media. It's not about you. It's about it's about the audience. It's not about selling. It's about telling your story, and then having drawing people in because they connect with your story and the problems you solve.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up social media, because when I was at the Red Cross, this was when Facebook came on the scene, and I got called to DC about a dozen times over about 3 or 4 months and said, okay, what are we doing about Facebook? What's your Facebook strategy? And we hired an agency, we got people, we had news journalists, and Red Cross has 187 donation centers, one in San Diego, blood donation centers. And this little donation center in Kansas City, I think it was, came up with this great idea. And all they did was they gave a little whiteboard to every donor, and that person wrote on the whiteboard how donating blood made them feel. Mm-hmm. And then they took a picture of it and they posted it to their local Facebook page. And it was amazing. So, of course, I can take no credit for this, but this campaign came to it. Because all I did was, what I did? I bought 187 whiteboards,
Mm-hmm.
and I set them out to the donation centers across the country. And that campaign, now 10 years later, is the most effective
Wow.
social media campaign, I think, one of the things I've ever seen. And there's two really, I think, important points. It wasn't about the Red Cross. It was about the donor.
Yeah.
It was about how it made them feel, which is a really important thread in social media, because so many businesses get it really wrong, because they say, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and I just donated 5%. I don't understand why nobody shared my tweet, or nobody shared my post, because it's about them. Social is person to person. It's not B2C. So by empowering the donors themselves and just giving this simple tool, it turned out to be, like I said, the campaign is 10 years old now, and you can still see it.
It's remarkable.
And I think that helps when you get to people that are trying to tell a story that were either raised in a way that, I was raised in a devout Catholic family, so you don't talk about yourself. It's all about sacrifice. Or people that are shy. I get these clients that they're scared to talk about themselves, or they're very shy. And I think that one of the ways that you can help them get out of their shell is remind them, this isn't about you. You're taking their pain away.
Authenticity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we talked about how to develop the story and make it connect with customers. How do we get the story out? Because if we're not telling the story, it's just sitting in our office doing nothing for us. So what are some really interesting ways? And maybe I'll have the panel jump in, but I want to hear from the group as well. Maybe some creative ways that you've gotten your message out. But maybe starting with Greg, since you're kind of in that.
Well, again,
Message out
I
the
think
digital
kind
world.
of practically and tactically speaking, I think of authenticity and connecting and having your customers and reviews and people tell your story. I spoke about the LFT model a little bit earlier, and one of the ways you reduce that anxiety, which is a drag, right? So how do I do that? Third-party validation, right? Third-party validation in digital marketing is, hey, you know what? New York Times gave me 3 stars, or Sally said I'm the best life coach ever. So that third-party validation is a practical and tactical tool to reduce that anxiety and make people trust you, right? So if you're thinking about your messaging, how do you tell people, hey, I'm a purpose-driven company, I'm trying to make the world a better place? Rather than you say it, how do you get your customers to say it about you? How do you encourage reviews? Take that review and package it into messaging that now it's somebody else talking about you and you're not just talking about yourself. Even just putting some quotes and having your customer, hey, Sally said I'm the best, right? You know, sure, it's your neighbor, but they said you're the best and you can go on.
Sure, your mom.
Your mom. And
Yes.
Susan, there you go.
Well, but again, it's, you know, people want to, they're looking for reasons to believe, right? So authenticity. So that's one way, and that's not necessarily a distribution strategy, pushing that content out, but if you can get people, it's one tactic, again, that can help get that, make that message more effective.
So I'll give it's the open your mouth. I mean, that's the one. That's the simple answer. Because again, we're so afraid. We're so afraid of what we went through, and if it's really going to connect with other people. So I say open your mouth because I really mean practice, right? I'm sure that you're having your clients practice and practice and practice. And I was on the phone call yesterday. Every time I get together with this CEO, which I shared, who will remain nameless. You know, he say, okay, so I'm coming up to this quarterly meeting with all my employees. What should I talk about? And I always say, yourself. You know, it's what are you going through, or what did you go through, or what's hard, what's your biggest challenge right now? Because guess what, you're in a growing company, and everyone is facing the same exact challenges. So if all you do is just basically say, look, it's hard, this is difficult. This is what I really stand for, and this is why I stand for it, right? You're going to make a huge difference. So the first thing is really, know what your story is. Story's fine, and then put it out there. So, personally, we started doing Instagram. I know we're 7 million years late to the game, but it's because I was so nervous. Like, I don't want to do this, and what do I have to say? And really, I need to buy the right camera. And then so with Justine, my very bold, courageous assistant, who is a veteran, that was yesterday, thank you, we've gone out. So Team Coach Mitch, I'd like you all to join Team Coach Mitch. We're putting out messages on why we hide, why we don't follow our dream. We're actually giving away, if anyone's interested, a free leadership course. Because we're just like, if you've got something inside of you that is really that important, and if you ask your friend will tell you that's really important, then you just got to open up your mouth and put it out there. And so I really believe in branding and marketing, and I also believe no matter where you are in the company, if you're the owner or an employee, that you just start vocalizing what is important to you, and then the market that connects with you, they'll come.
I would actually like to hear from everybody here on how they get their message out. Because I think video's the best, but that's just...
Video's a great tool, but I would say that for most of the companies I've worked with over the last 15 to 20 years, setting up customer advisory boards and most people don't realize that most of their customers are the only person in their company with their role. And the fact that I've been doing peer groups for so long, when you take your customers out of their environment and get them together, most people, oh, that's selfish to me. It's actually not. And when you get them together to talk to each other, they get to share each other's challenges, and they become your best referral sources, more than just you telling your stories, them telling their stories to each other and cross-pollinating their stories. So to me, 6 to 10 clients, the same clients getting together on a regular basis at some point in your journey is insanely powerful for telling your story and creating your story.
Any other ideas? Come on, Nick. You have some creative ways of getting the story out.
So first and foremost, I start with what audiences you want to communicate with and how they actually are digesting or gathering their information, right? Because they're all different, whether they're a current customer or whether they're a prospect. And I think that oftentimes the companies that I work with make the mistake of blanket messaging to every single audience, and it's very different. So with customers, you have to validate that decision, make them feel good about their decision that they made. So going back to what you're saying is really what's in it for them, versus a prospect, what value is it to them as they're going through that decision-making process or that purchasing process. And oftentimes I think that what happens is people push a single message out through social media thinking that they're going to reach everyone. And the reality is that you still have to do tailored messaging across those media platforms for those individual customers or audiences. And it can go all the way from employees to board members to prospects to current clients and even customers that are somewhere within that product owning experience, whether they're brand new or whether they're at the point where they are ready for an upgrade or that they've been using that product for a while. And then turning customers into advocates is incredibly powerful, especially as you're talking about social media.
And it depends on the product too, if it's sort of,
Absolutely.
because like what Larry's talking about, if you've all been part of networking groups where referrals are key, right? If you tell me someone that's gonna he's gonna provide me the best deal for a hot tub because you said so, then I've got it. I don't have to worry about time spent online looking and that kind of thing. And when they get to know you more, they root for you. So that's a different kind of product than maybe something like, I don't know, an esthetician or someone that owns clothes, that Instagram's going to be the best because everything looks so pretty.
Right. And I think one of the interesting things as the conversation's gone on, the notion of being a purpose-driven organization brings kind of a second dimension because, as marketers, we all think about, we have a product or service, and we think about what value is the customer getting or client getting from that product or service, right? But if all you're doing is selling, orange juice, it's a transactional relationship. And what we're trying to do as a purpose-driven organization, we want to attract customers that want to connect with purpose-driven organizations, which can help develop a much deeper relationship. So you still need to talk about your product or service, but it's just a shallow relationship. The loyalty is not going to be there. It's when that emotional connection is understanding how they're going to feel and helping them understand how you being purpose-driven in however you are in terms of the community, how you treat your employees, whatever it might be. Bombas Socks is out there. They donate a pair of socks for every, and it's remarkably successful. So everybody finds a little niche on how they do it, but whatever that is can develop that much deeper relationship with the customer. So you got to kind of have a dual story, and how do they kind of merge? And again, the mediums, video versus whatever, may be very different. Because it's kind of hard to connect emotionally through the word as opposed to through video content or some other kind of content.
Yeah, and just that voice of the customer, right? And it's interesting to get some real surprises sometimes. So we did a survey we work with a company in North County that does children's pens and gel scents, and some of you I think know Veronica that works there. We did a survey to about 500 of their customers, and we put the survey results of how do they make you feel, or why do you purchase our products? And in the word cloud, women owned, which is this giant thing that popped out. And that was so off everyone's radar.
Wow.
Right? And that was the voice of the customer. And we're like, wow, that is such a great insight. This is why people are buying from us. And we had no idea. I think maybe there was some, but to the degree that was, of why people were engaging, it was really fascinating.
Wow.
Maybe I'm just a geek with this data.
We did that's more for like internal maybe storytelling or sharing, but we do a survey, but we just left an open-ended question of tell us a story about a time you connected with. We work with healthcare a lot, so patients and or could be customers, and like in the last 3 months, and people just had space to just kind of share a moment that they had with connecting to their actual customer, and then it was anonymous, so they felt like they could really share, even though most of the stories were positive and proud, but then you kind of share it back with their teams, and they were all reading, and I think it was really powerful to help the internal team really connect again to why they're doing what they're doing. And then in turn kind of support their customers in a better way because of that memory. So I think that was really interesting.
And I think it helps to build on something Katie mentioned. Again, we want our customers or clients to feel a certain way. Well, they do feel a certain way, which we want to understand. But ultimately, we have to decide how do we want to make them feel. As you're building, kind of messaging, the rational benefits, but that emotional benefit is so critical, and you have to be very intentional on how do we want it to feel, because that's going to drive imagery. It's going to drive how you talk about people. How many people in the room kind of work with some kind of an Apple product, right? And when you get that box and you open it, the experience of just opening the box, right? And it's an emotional, response to a computer or a phone, right? And the product itself is nothing, but they create this experience. So how do we create that experience, that kind of emotional connection with a brand, with our brand, in a way that's extraordinarily intentional? Because you don't want your customers to accidentally feel a certain way. You want to delight them in a way that they feel the way you want them to. So think about how do you want your customers to feel, as opposed to just kind of hoping that they feel a certain way.
Yeah, you essentially want to hold their hand throughout.
Right. And create that experience. Right.
So,
So we've been talking about customers and clients. Any questions? I want to talk a little bit about employees, which are a different animal. Maybe same story, but different angle. Any questions or other comments about customers? Okay. So thinking about our story, about how we're going to connect with our current employees and prospective employees. How are we going to attract the right employees? How do we develop that message? Maybe Katie, start with you.
Video.
Yeah, video.
One word.
I mean, outward. There's internal marketing and there's outward marketing, and there's what Larry's saying. There's various ways to do that. Where, hey, I think there's a job open at this company. I know the guy that's hiring, and I know the woman that's hiring as well. And this is what they say about it. And I think that you should really consider them. That is traditional still and still valuable, in my opinion. And then it's done. If you tell me I should, you get referred, then everybody knows this person has integrity, this person has integrity, this person has integrity, and then we go. That's one way. The other way is that you create cultures. So the marketing, a lot of people have channels, video channels in their companies. I don't know if any of your clients do or your clients do, but there's internal channels and then there's outward channels. And a lot of it is talking about what you were saying, where you want to talk about, I love working here. You get everybody else to tell everybody why it's so great to work here and what they're doing here. And you can send that out or internal. And you have it and then you have that message when people are onboarding. This is why we love working here. This is why you made the right decision. Yeah. Okay. And the reason that video is so good, and again, I'm joking, but I just love video, is that you can make an impression really quick. You can touch someone's heart really quick. Music, video, and something somebody says, and it's simple.
Yeah. Greg, any thoughts?
So I told you earlier we had a lot of nonprofit clients. That's good and bad. The bad part of it is, from a budgeting standpoint, we've always sort of chosen to hire, I think, what you call light and bright, right? So we've got about 30 employees, and we have a lot of those folks are young in their 20s. So employee retention, is really an important piece. And how do you attract and retain talent there? And hopefully pay a little less. It's easy to hire somebody for $100,000. I think it's going to be great. So one of the things that I think is really interesting about the time that we're living in today, and actually I read an article this morning in the Wall Street Journal that talked about this grand experiment with social media and how it's making, right now, I think teenage girls' depression is higher than it's ever been before, because rather than bringing us together, in some ways it's really isolating us more than ever, and it's really having some very adverse effects. And I would posit that part of the solution to that also translates into giving people is purpose, right? And that purpose of using that tool for employee retention, using that tool to come in people, which is why I think when I hire young kids, the first thing I talk about is, hey, maybe you can work on the Red Cross account and you can help in a disaster. Maybe you can work on Feed the Children, and we can do that. And I won't say shamelessly dangle, but in some ways, as an employee retention tool, I want to talk about how, yes, we do some things, but we do pro bono work, we work on nonprofit, and we're making a difference a little bit in the world. Yeah, sometimes we're selling hot tubs and trinkets to make the ends meet, but this is something that's going to make you feel a little better. So I think if you truly are a purpose-driven organization, that message has to be front and center in your hiring and retention process.
So again, I'll go back to the CEO I'm talking about. So the answer to your question is yours was video. Mine was be very intentional. Your greatest hires are going to come from people that your employees already know, so they vetted them out. So with this CEO, we basically plan his quarterly conversations about a month, sometimes 6 weeks in advance. And we're looking at, okay, what is the message that we want to send? And we script that. Again, we're looking at what do we want them to feel, and of course, the thing we're looking for is that they feel great that they've made the right decision to work at this company. Thank God it is a really good company. It's not like the companies I worked for. It's a really good company. Everyone is really, really engaged. And then he does pulse surveys immediately after the event. And so that allows us to actually see if the employees are picking up those messages. And not only that, we're tracking it over time. So we're tracking his speeches. We're also tracking. We ask the employees what they think about their bosses as it relates to their values, and we're tracking that over time as well. So we're doing a lot of we're very, very intentional in the values and the way the leaders need to be in the company. We're measuring it, and then we're basically taking the data and we're going, you screwed up this month, right? So we're being, again, very vulnerable and very, very open with our data, and then it just kind of reinforces that we need to tighten the message, and we need to actually act according to the message that we're stating. And then, of course, we call it this huge sucking sound. If anyone remembers Ross Perot, it's this huge sucking sound now towards this company, and so now all the competitors are starting to hear and see about it, and they're coming in to work there. And really, when you talk about, as you guys know, to make a lot of money as a company, to be very successful, if you start losing people, I don't care what your branding budget is. If you start losing people, it's done. Yep. So we just say, it's about the purpose. It's living the purpose. It's keeping on point to the purpose, measuring, and then doing it again and again.
And in terms of developing the message, how many people here have heard the phrase recently, employer branding? It's like the hot new thing in the brand. Nobody. Okay. It's really interesting because we all market our products and services, but think about your company as the product or service, and your customers are employees, right? So, because again, you have your organization, and you're competing for employees with the rest of San Diego, right? If it's an IT position, it could be the rest of San Diego. If it's a digital marketing person, maybe it's a smaller set, but you're still competing with a zillion companies out there. So how are you going to position yourself and make yourself attractive to those employees? And just a couple of tools I'll provide. We've done this for some clients. Is talk to your employees. We actually interviewed 20 employees of one client and said, you're getting hit up by headhunters every week. In this economy, tight job market, headhunters are trying to get people out. And all of them are getting hit up by headhunters on a weekly or monthly basis. And we asked them, why do you stay? What do you like about this place? And you start to hear some common themes. And you look at the competitive websites and LinkedIn profiles, they're talking about benefits, they're talking about what you'll be doing, but they're not talking about values. They're not talking about, but that's what we've heard from the employees. We heard things like, I feel valued, I feel listened to by the CEO, I feel like, my contributions are going to get me into a position where I'm going to continue to learn. That's the stuff you then start communicating to attract employees, because that's what they value.
But you have to demonstrate that.
Yeah.
Then you have to live it. Exactly. That's what we talk
Just market it.
Exactly.
Say this is what we do because it has to be congruent.
Well, it's like selling a product, an Apple phone, and then you get it. It's like, this doesn't do what they said it would do. So your company better deliver on what you say you can do on LinkedIn or whatever else. So, but think about your product, your company as the product in this context, both from what you deliver, but also purpose-driven. Again, if you want to attract employees who value the way you operate in the community, then talk about it, but you have to do it.
Because people talk.
Nobody
right?
ever says anything.
Right. So then if you have this beautiful website with all these beautiful values, and then they say, hey, I want to go work at so-and-so, I've been working there for 3 years. It's all BS, right? There's the...
Well, they'll go right to Glassdoor first.
Or Glassdoor.
Exactly.
By the way.
Yeah. This is not a big city.
Right.
This is a very small collection of small towns.
Right.
That function as a,
Yeah.
So the story here is very consistency of story and truly showing up as who you say you are is actually more important here
Sure.
than probably any other city I've ever visited.
That's great.
I agree.
Do you have a question?
Bringing it all together, I actually had a client who uses video testimonials for every single employee. So they have little, like,
Oh,
meet
nice.
our team, here's a little mini bio, and you can click on it and literally watch a video as to why they work.
That's smart.
It's
Wow.
super powerful.
Yeah.
If your team, if you're not showing up, I don't know that your team, like, is that really going to work? Or are people literally going to sit there and lie on a video? I don't know.
That's exactly right.
Like,
Right.
And you
I
can read
mean,
it, like, are they really enthusiastic about this? I don't know if this person is, you know what I'm saying? I think
Right.
that would just be hugely powerful of mixing that. Here's our full team, everyone has a video.
That's cool.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So we only have a couple minutes left. Wait, an hour flew by. One last question. So we talked about customers, talked about employees, and what other stakeholders might we want to think about as we think about building our story and telling our story?
So when I was getting ready for this, there was talking to your employees. There was actually talking to your current clients, right? So we have one client who actually he has a team of 10. He's in commercial real estate. I do a lot of commercial real estate coaching, and what he's done is basically said, "I'm going to come to you, client. I've been working with you for 12 years, but I don't even think you know who we are." And so he actually brought in his whole team to sit down with their whole team and just basically go through and, what's your story? What's your story? Why do you work for the team? Why are you excited about the team? And then what the team did from a vulnerable standpoint is basically shared, this was Bryce, right? And so Bryce was like, yeah, I'm always trying to up my game, so that's why I've hired a coach. That's why I'm taking these trainings. That's why, I spend money to have my team really work on them being better. Because these are the books that I'm reading. These are the tools that I'm using. Here are the tools that I'm actually using. Here they are as a gift to you, clients. And the clients are just like flabbergasted. So we always think about we need to go get our story out to new clients. Everybody knows it's always easy to keep a current client. So I would just say go out and tell your story to new clients. And then the other example is Eric. Eric is bidding on a big thing up in Cal State San Marcos. He's basically going in and winning through, here's my story. I was born a poor child in Pennsylvania, and I didn't have any money, and then I went to college like with the skin of my teeth, and I had a horrible experience, but I made good friends there. And so this is why I want to work with you. So he's basically bringing in, as opposed to, we're the biggest company in the whole world and you should work with us. No, it's about him. Because ultimately, I think in 2019, we're now working with human beings, except for AI. But we're working with you or you or you. I'm choosing to work with you because I have so much choices. And getting back to conscious capitalism is like, is that who you say you are, right? I got into this business because I spent 13 years of people not being who they say they were. And all I wanted to do was be with people who just show up as who they really, really are. That's also a reason why I like San Diego versus anywhere else is there's so many people here who are just real. This is who I am. This is what I'm into. I do stand-up comedy or, whatever, but that's just kind of just a component of who I truly am.
Yeah, I think the thread that you're pulling on there, it gets back to something I think we've talked about a while. It's authenticity, right? And if you're truly authentic, your stakeholders, my biggest stakeholder is my family, right? I can't go home and talk to my wife if we're really just BSing it on the job. And we said, yeah, we're donating 5%, but we're really not. You really have to live it. And when you live it, you feel good. When you're happier, you do better work. And that, I think, translates to your employees, to all of your stakeholders, whether they're your family, your clients, your customers. So it's really just about, walking the walk. And so
I would say on top, with that theme of walking the walk and living it and being in a room of conscious capitalists, don't forget when you're having these conversations that your body language matches everything. I would say don't forget to be present when you're talking to these people. Don't forget to look them in the eye. Don't forget to put your phone away. Don't forget to be open with your body. So that 83% of what we learn is by sight, and people are listening to your body. And so you've got all this great messaging and this brilliant messaging, and you've got the right lingo and the SEO words. Don't forget when you're out there that you want to be present and that they know that they're being heard and seen. That's one thing that you don't want to forget after, because you work so hard on this perfect message. Let's not forget the next level.
It's like a restaurant. great food, but the presentation sucks.
Great food, yeah, like the best food. Like you spent all of that time on it, and then, but people aren't going to buy it. They're not if they don't see that you really are passionate about it.
Exactly. We only have a couple minutes. We have questions.
So there's a third party in that equation, which is your key vendors. Because
Yes.
they often
Great
vendors
point.
are making and break you as well, so you got to roll them the same way.
Absolutely. And
Customers
we're working
are
with the vendors who share the same values, right? And the community, of course, there's so many stakeholders to think about. And that's really what conscious capitalism is about. It goes beyond the shareholder. You know, the shareholders are important. Obviously, we're in it to make money, but it's ultimately how do we use the money that we make to elevate humanity, if you will, and serve the other stakeholders.
Well, that's kind of really the whole crux of conscious capitalism, honestly, right? Is that, hey, people want to buy consciously, we really do, right? I mean, for the most part, if I'm looking at two different brands and I know this one is sourcing their products really well, and this one I'm not so sure, because they're telling their story, like Patagonia. Everybody knows they say, the story. And so I want to buy Patagonia, because I know like, this one I'm not so sure, because they're not sharing their story.
True.
So people want to buy that way. If they're taking care of the dolphins and the planet and all that stuff, and they're trying to do their part, and they're giving back, if I'm hearing that, I want to buy from it, I want to work for it, I want to be a part of it. Like, that's like the crux of all of it. And if you can take that and have that part of your story and be sharing that, people are more likely to buy from it and work for it.
Yep.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So the struggle I always have is you're kind of preaching to the choir here, right? We all believe in
Yeah.
this concept. But you go out in the real world and it's more like, well, give me the ROI. Give me the dollars and cents. So how do you weave those two together? Which one leads what? I'm always back and forth on that. That's a real
Well, I don't do it that way. That's what I say. I don't do it that way.
Okay, just take
Yeah.
a stand.
I take a stand. Yeah, and I'll say, if you're looking for the lowest price, you should go somewhere else. But I really, I always say, I'm in my car all the time. People say, I want to do a phone conference. I don't want to do a phone conference. I want to see you. So I'll say, look, I want to sit down. I actually learned this from Phil Goodrich, who hired me at Nokia. It was like, what? Why don't we sit down and let's just figure out if it would make sense for us to work together. It's a lot easier when you're not starving, right? I'm not starving, thank God, and I have that. But that's kind of where I go now. Is let's just find out. In the way you're doing it, I don't do it that way. So.
Well, think about Patagonia. By far, not the least expensive brand out there, but highly successful and they're attracting the customers who share those values. So we have to put a stake in the ground, as you said. Do we want to work with people who share those values?
Absolutely.
But there are, Jeff, I hear what you're talking about, knowing what you do. There are stats out there that talk about when people have had leadership or training that goes under your umbrella, that works, that you can,
Support it.
if you need, to support it, yeah.
Well, and your messaging can be measurable. I mean, not everybody has the time, resources, or traffic to do testing and optimization, right? Message A versus message B, but you can find other data points or ideally do that. But, certainly in the digital world, everything is measurable and you can get some leading indicators of what's working and what's not.
Yep. One last question.
I hear what you're saying about doing the videos and the social media and all the marketing and that and the messaging. I'm pretty new where I work, which is a nonprofit. But I'm wondering if you do all of those things and people don't know you're there, how do you get them to know you're there if you don't have a huge marketing budget? Like how do you get them to see your video or whatever if they don't even know you exist?
Yeah, what we find with limited budgets is that organizations are still trying to talk to everybody. And the key is to really do some deep thinking and segmenting the market. Who is your core target? And it could be a hybrid target, that's only 4% of the market. And how are you gonna find them?
Right, I want to find those people whose values match, like you said, what our values and our mission is. But it's like, how do I find them if I don't have a huge marketing budget?
So you start, you just begin.
Yeah.
And you start and you set a goal of, I want to, like with Instagram, right? We're like 800, whatever, right? But we used to be at 400, and we used to be at 200, but you just start. So like, let's say you had whatever your media outlet is, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, something else, and then you just talk to all these people. You go, Team Coach Mitch. I said it twice now. That's what you. Did you get that?
Open your mouth.
Again, we have to have focus because we're a nonprofit and we have very few people. Like as a marketing person, I'm supposed to do, websites, graphic design, promoting social media. I mean, seriously, we have people in positions that have to cover a lot of things.
Your target market is specific. It's parents,
Yeah.
it's families of autistic adults that, there's places where those,
Yeah.
there's organizations and groups online, clubs, groups, they're already self-organized. I actually think it's easier for you.
Yeah, it is. I agree.
To define market.
Okay, well, I'm kind of new to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never worked for a nonprofit. But
Yeah.
no,
That your audience, in many ways online, already self-organizes.
Yeah.
You just need to
He's
get
right.
in front of your own audience that's already self-organized versus trying to create your own audience to your own
Okay,
destination.
so for instance, there's a group of women with autistic children,
Yeah.
so join that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because I kind of did that
Yeah.
this year once, but maybe I just need to
Keep-
pursue that kind of.
And the other thing is there's PR people and companies that will do work like that pro bono, because they've been touched by that. You just need to find them.
Yep.
Okay, is there a
If you have any
name for
names,
them?
we'd
I'd be happy to, I know, we'll
Oh, yeah,
sit down.
right, okay.
I would like, the last thing I'd add is quality over quantity. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You've got to,
Right.
quality over quantity is going to trump, 'cause a lot of people say, I want to do 5 Facebook posts a day. Well, that's just shouting into the hurricane.
Mhm.
If
Right.
that's not a good message,
Right.
right? You need to have focus. It takes you 2 or 3 months to do one great video, one great piece of content, and then just absolutely ride that as long as you can, rather than just volume. I have a calendar. I need to post to Instagram and Twitter every day. And what are we going to say today? I mean, that's such a common mistake that you just say, you know what, let's take all that effort and boil it down and do something once. Great.
That's great.
One more thing, I appreciate all of you. This was really very beneficial and got a lot of good information. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're a little bit over time-wise, but thank you so much for coming. Thank you to our panel.
Yay!
Really, 1 or 2 things to take away today that could be helpful.
Great.